She stood frozen, her hands trembling as the sound of fabric ripping echoed through the grand dining hall. The guests fell silent. Moments ago she was just serving wine. Now her dignity was being torn apart in front of everyone. The woman who ripped her uniform sneered, convinced she was just another servant. But what she didn't know would shatter her world. Because the waitress she humiliated wasn't who she thought she was, and the man watching from across the room was about to change everything. Amara had always learned to blend in, to work silently, to smile politely, to never cause trouble. After all, in a place like the Grand Regent Hotel, silence was survival. She had been working double shifts for months, saving every tip she could to support her younger brother through college. Tonight's event was just another high society dinner, another night of pretending not to notice the looks, the whispers, the subtle mockery that came her way. The guests came dressed in pride and perfume, sipping gold and crystal glasses, talking about luxury as if it were air. Amara moved gracefully between tables, her uniform crisp, her posture perfect. She had no idea that fate was about to put her in the spotlight she never asked for. Among the crowd sat a man watching her, not with contempt but with curiosity. He'd seen her before, but not like this. Her quiet dignity stood out among the arrogance that filled the room. And somewhere deep inside him he felt something stirring, something that would soon expose every hidden prejudice in that room. That night wasn't just about dinner. It was about to become a lesson in humanity no one would ever forget. The night was flawless until it wasn't. Amara had just refilled a guest glass when she felt a cold voice slice through the room. "You missed a spot," the woman said sharply, her manicured hand gesturing toward a drop of wine on the tablecloth. Amara nodded, quietly wiping it away, but the woman wasn't done. She wanted an audience. "You people never learn, do you?" She sneered, her words coated in venomous politeness. Laughter rippled through the table, the kind that cuts deeper than a knife. Amara's breath caught in her chest, but she said nothing. She had endured worse. She had learned that silence was safer. But tonight the cruelty didn't stop there. The woman reached for Amara's sleeve, pretending to inspect her uniform. "If you're going to serve in this place, at least try to look the part," she said. And with a swift tug, the sound of tearing fabric filled the air. Gasps. Silence. All eyes turned to them. The humiliation burned through Amara like fire. Her mind screamed to run, to hide, to disappear, but her feet stayed still. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. At the other end of the hall, the man in the suit, her silent observer, stood frozen. His jaw clenched, rage flickering in his eyes. Because he wasn't just a guest, he was the host. And the woman who had just torn Amara's uniform was his wife. The whispers started instantly, an electric tension rippling through the elite crowd. No one dared move, yet everyone was watching. The man's eyes locked on Amara's, silently apologizing for what had just happened. But what came next would turn that quiet apology into a storm no one could stop. For a moment, no one moved. The sound of torn fabric still hung in the air like thunder that refused to fade. Amara stood still, her chest rising and falling as dozens of eyes pierced through her. But before the woman could gloat any further, a deep voice echoed from the center of the hall. Enough. Every head turned. The man who had been watching, tall, composed, eyes burning with restrained fury, was now walking toward them. The guests parted as if gravity itself made way for him. The blonde woman blinked, confused. "Darling, I was just embarrassing yourself," he cut in coldly, "and disrespecting the co-owner of this hotel." Gasps spread like wildfire. The woman's smirk fell away, replaced by disbelief. What did you just say?" He stopped beside Amara, his hand steady as he gently draped his jacket over her torn uniform. "Meet Amara Williams," he said, his voice steady. "She's not a waitress. She's my business partner, the woman who built this entire charity event you're attending tonight." The silence turned heavy. The laughter died. Faces that once looked down on her now stared with guilt, or worse, fear. The blonde woman stumbled backward, her face pale. "You didn't tell me?" "I didn't think I needed to," he replied quietly. "But maybe tonight you'll finally learn that worth isn't measured by skin or by status or by your seat at a table." The crowd avoided her eyes. Amara stood taller, calm, her pain slowly turning to power. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. The truth had spoken for her. When the night finally ended, the grand hall stood silent. Guests slipped out quietly, their glitter and gossip replaced with guilt and uneasy reflection. The woman who once mocked now sat alone, her arrogance stripped bare. Amara remained where she was for a moment, her torn sleeve still hidden beneath the jacket that carried both dignity and pain. She looked around the empty tables, the crystal glasses, the fallen napkins, the echo of cruelty still lingering in the air, and breathed deeply. For the first time she wasn't invisible. The man turned to her, his voice softer now. "I'm sorry you had to endure that." She met his gaze, steady and calm. "It's not the first time," she said quietly. "But maybe it'll be the last time someone stays silent." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. And as she walked out of the hall, shoulders straight, the golden light from the chandeliers followed her, like a silent apology from a world that had looked away for too long. The next morning, every headline carried her story, not as a victim, but as a voice. Because what happened that night wasn't just about one cruel act. It was about millions who face quiet injustice every day. The question now wasn't who was right or wrong. It was simpler, heavier, and impossible to ignore. When will respect stop depending on the color of your skin?